So I'd like to welcome everyone to historic Camp Evans. Hello everyone, hi. Thanks for making the journey today and welcome to historic Camp Evans here in Wall Township, New Jersey. This is InfoAge. We are the Military Technology Museum of New Jersey, and we work with InfoAge as nonprofits at the Grace of Wall Township. So everyone here are volunteers, and we use our own time and money to bring this to life. We really aren't working off any type of grants per se. It's all these dedicated people that come on their spare time when they could be at the beach and try and keep history alive here. So I'm trying to get through this because I want to get you guys over to the museum itself. I do want to recognize a number of people from the organization. The Vice President, Rick Wark, I don't know if he's here or not. He might be over at the museum. And I have Ray Brown, but I don't see him. My son, Luke, is the curator. He's here today. And Michelle and Anthony Ricci, is that your name? Anthony, yeah. He's a volunteer, but his wife was kind enough from Carrabba's at Brick to supply all of the food today, which is wonderful. Colonel Ken is here. I saw Colonel Ken someplace. So those are kind of our people. My friend Anthony, lifelong friend Anthony Giovia is here. He actually did a lot with the flag, which I'll explain in a second. And Jeff Brown, who's a high school teacher and a friend, is going to give you a presentation on St. Malo, so you can get some background there. Peter and Laura and Michael Patras, and also Alex and Michael are at the back table. They're volunteers too. We have Colonel Mike Ruane, who's the CEO of InfoAge. Fred Carl, the founder, is here today. Jeff Brace, Tom Settergrand, Gloria, I don't see Gloria or Bill Newberry, but those guys, they're all volunteers. They're all part of this that bring it to life. And of course, my mother's here, my sister and her husband Tim, Andy, my brother and his wife Liz, Dana is here, my daughter, and so I want to thank my wife too, Barbara. So these people that I just mentioned, the reason I mentioned them is that they're not blood relatives to you guys that are here with the flag. We have three families. It's the Markowitz family, the Stiles family, and the DeMott family. But these people that I mentioned are not blood relatives of your family, but now we're all family at this point. Sorry. So we'll call you at Thanksgiving. Okay. Keep the door open. So almost 80 years ago to the day, the flag was penned, which was last Thursday, August 15th, 1944. Of the 37 signatures on the flag, 4 had passed away pretty much right after the flag was signed. I also want to mention too that one day I did get a call when we were trying to research Lieutenant John Markowitz, who was the commanding officer that signed the flag. And one day I got a call from John Markowitz. I said, what is this? Well, it turns out that John Markowitz is here. He's down in the back of the room, and he is the nephew of Lieutenant John Markowitz, and he was named for John after John had been killed in action. And he brought some of the family heirlooms here today too, and his wife Gail. So since then we've become phone buddies too. So this is all a wonderful family. We don't do this for profit or gain. We do it because we care and we remember. And that's because we owe you, the families, what they did for us. And we can't forget that. We have to keep remembering it. So with this, as I get emotional, I'm going to turn it over to a good friend of mine who's I think you're currently the CEO. I know you do everything around here. Colonel Mike Ruane.
First of all, I just want to thank Dan very much. I was going to mention this a little bit later on, but I think you can see the passion when he speaks to you about how he feels about what is being done here today. My name's Mike Ruane. I'm the CEO of InfoAge. Someone said I'm like a puppet master. No, I'm like a cat herder. Because if you ever dealt with volunteers, it's like herding cats. Because you think you're going to get something done, and all of a sudden the guy's this way, and you need 2 people to do something, and 40 people show up, and the next thing you know, you're getting work done. And I was asked to just say a couple of words about InfoAge itself, but picture's worth 1,000 words, and my wife always tells me, the microphone is not made for an Irishman to talk for a long period of time. So what we have over where the programs are is what we call our quad fold. And this will tell you something about InfoAge, about who we are, what our mission is, what our vision is, all the various exhibits and museums that we have here that focus on communications and electronics technology that has been developed here over the past 100 and some odd years. It's an amazing place. The building you're in right now is over 110, 112 years old. A lot of work has been done to restore it to what it used to look like, and it's done all on the volunteers. But that takes care of InfoAge. I was honored to be asked to do this because, like the people we are honoring today, I was a combat infantryman. I commanded 2 light infantry companies in Vietnam. And as I was reading the book, it's an amazing story about a whole bunch of guys who at one time were just, living their normal lives, probably in the early 1940s. The next thing you know, the world erupted and changed, and they found themselves in France fighting a battle for St. Malo. I read the stories about the 37 people that are here. Out of those 37, 27 got the Purple Heart. And if anybody knows the infantry, been around the infantry, that's pretty close to it. Like they say, the infantryman, he either goes into combat, he's either not coming out, or if he comes out, he's going to be entirely changed. And I imagine from talking to Mr. DeMott, just like he said, his father never talked about it. Many people don't. 27 people at the Purple Heart. 2 of them got the Silver Stars. 4 of them extended in the Army and became military careerists. 4 of them were killed in action. The other interesting thing I found was that over 12 of them were over 30 years old. Okay, that is old. I want to tell you, especially for the infantry. If you're 30 in the infantry and what you have to do, I'll tell you, that is really tough. And these guys were there. And to assault a castle, I'll tell you, that is even tougher. I just fought in the jungles. These guys had to fight in built-up areas, and that's an entirely different type of warfare. So the exceptional part about this is not only the families out here, but it's the amount of work that Dan and Rick have done to put this together. Their passion for this is unbelievable. And if you talk to Rick or Dan and you look in their eyes when they start talking about it, you can see it. I mean, you see their eyes light up because it has been a quest for them, a journey for them to make certain that you got here today so that you can be properly honored. And I'll tell you, I am just very honored to be a part of it. And again, I welcome you here, and I want to thank you very much for attending. And I want to thank you for your soldiers, okay, who either gave all or gave a lot, for the United States of America. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fred. I've been involved with this place since the beginning, and it is really heartwarming to see what Dan and company has done. And it's heartwarming to know that 36 families will have a level of pride that they didn't have before Dan got access to the flag. 36 out of 37 is pretty good accomplishment. The flag was signed on August 15th, 1944. A year later, it would be over. The Empire of Japan was defeated. Germany had been defeated on May 6th. And here's a newspaper article talking about how radar was a major reason for victory. And one of the photographs, which is out of your eyesight, has equipment from Camp Evans, New Jersey. And below it are two gentlemen who were the fathers of naval radar. Their team formed here during World War I. So this was the home of Army and the birthplace of naval radar. Pretty awesome, pretty unique. Now let's talk about President Truman's words. The battles of the laboratories held fateful risks for us, as well as the battles of the air, land, and sea. And we have now won the battles of the laboratories as we have won the others. You're standing or sitting in the Army's radar laboratory. This is sacred ground, and it is so appropriate that this flag is here with all its signatures, and it is so awesome. Thank you, Dan. As you leave today, give Dan a hug, because he has touched every one of your future generations with his generosity. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone is having a good time. It's my great honor to be here today at Camp Evans to help be a part of this magnificent program. My name is Jeff Brown. I'm a teacher at Southern Regional High School down in Manahawkin in Southern Ocean County. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the 83rd Division at Saint-Malo, a little bit about the division and about the battle itself, for a little context as to how the flag happened to be here, and a little bit about the events that the men of Company K found themselves wrapped up in. So Saint-Malo is a very ancient town. It's located in Brittany on the coast of France, and it's been settled since about the 1st century BC. It was actually settled by the Gauls. And then over time, a number of Celts from Britain began to settle there, fleeing Roman control of Britain. The town itself is actually named for a 6th century Welsh monk by the name of Malo, who settled there and would eventually become sainted and thus give his name to Saint-Malo. Now, the residents of the town are fiercely independent. They like to say, "Nous ne sommes pas français, nous ne sommes pas bretons, nous sommes Malois." We are not French, we are not Breton, we are Malois. We are from Saint-Malo. So that fierce spirit of independence would continue through the years. The residents of the city would resist any who tried to control them, whether they be Roman or Norman or British or French. The residents, had that fierce sort of independent streak. In fact, for a short time in the 1500s, Saint-Malo was actually an independent city-state, which was the Republic of Saint-Malo. So they do have this strong sort of independent streak, and that streak would serve them well in the trials of World War II. Now, the city did gain something of a reputation as being a haven for pirates, or as they called them, corsairs. These corsairs would attack shipping in the English Channel. The king, of course, allowed this because he got a cut, but Saint-Malo also became known as the Corsair City. To many, of course, of the British and things like that, it was not a very enviable place. Now, of course, as time goes by, the 16th century French explorer Jacques Cartier was born in Saint-Malo, and it was from that city that he would leave on the expedition that would result in the European discovery of Canada. Jacques Cartier is buried in Saint-Malo. In fact, his tomb was damaged during the battle, and he is perhaps the city's most famous native son. Now, by the 19th century, Saint-Malo had become a resort for wealthy Parisians looking to escape the heat of the city in summer. It had a casino, of course, it had beaches. It was everything a resort community should be. Now, as World War II begins, the city is first the scene of action in the summer of 1940. Everyone, of course, is familiar with the British escape from Dunkirk. But what many do not know is that elements of the British Army also successfully evacuated the continent through Saint-Malo. So elements of British forces did evacuate from there. In June of 1940, the German army would occupy the city. The city would be fortified by the organization Todt. It was the German labor force. They brought in workers, both willing and unwilling, and they began to fortify the already strong defenses of the city with extra concrete, building bunkers, pillboxes, secure communications, and things like that. The city was incorporated into what became known as Hitler's Atlantic Wall. It was this defensive line that was designed to prevent any Allied incursion onto the continent. Now, the city itself would undergo several unpleasant experiences during this time. In August of 1940, the Gestapo visited the city and rounded up most of the Jewish population, many of whom would never return. So the city is now placed under German occupation. However, the French residents there were not willing to accept this. The Brittany Peninsula, and in particular the Saint-Malo area, were hotbeds of resistance activity. Somewhere around 2,500 resistance fighters resided in the Saint-Malo area. Many of them were communists. That was their political leaning. And they were, in particular, quite aggressive. A number of French resistance fighters preferred to sort of lay low, waiting for the Allied invasion. However, these resistance fighters were very aggressive and preferred taking the fight to the enemy. So for the German soldiers that would be stationed on the Brittany Peninsula, it was anything but an easy posting. There was a constant threat of resistance activity, and German soldiers had to be on their guard at all times. Now, these resistance fighters would later render invaluable service to the Allied war effort, particularly during the invasion of the Brittany Peninsula and the actions around Saint-Malo. So, of course, although we're focusing on the actions of the 83rd Division here, we must remember that this was an Allied effort, and the French resistance did immense service in furthering the liberation of their country. So Saint-Malo is again located on the Brittany Peninsula. It's kind of on the shoulder of the peninsula there, sort of at the base if you look to the north shore. The American advance into Brittany was somewhat controversial. Of course, the D-Day landings had taken place in Normandy to the north. The landings had succeeded in gaining a lodgment on the continent. And then, of course, the Allies found themselves fighting in the bocage, in the hedgerow country. By July of 1944, the Americans had launched Operation Cobra, and they had successfully broken out of the hedgerows and were now beginning what would become a very rapid advance across France. The German forces in France had collapsed sort of at that point, and there was now this rapid advance was taking place. The original Allied plan called for clearing out the Brittany Peninsula, but with the changing conditions on the ground, some Allied commanders, especially George Patton, argued that the resources devoted to Brittany would be better put into pushing eastward. However, General Eisenhower and drawing a blank. No, not Montgomery. He was to the north. Omar Bradley, thank you. General Bradley argued that there were some valid reasons to enter Brittany. One of these, of course, was that the Brittany Peninsula was harboring a large number of enemy soldiers. It was felt that these soldiers could present a threat to the lines of communication as supply as the American forces turned eastward. Additionally, the U.S. forces were quite logistics hungry. You can imagine the immense amounts of material necessary to move these forces as they were. And the Brittany Peninsula offered several potential port facilities that could hopefully be seized intact. And in addition, there was one final goal. There was the hope that the U-boat base at Lorient along the bottom of the peninsula there could be seized, and that U-boat base could be taken out of action. So even though General Patton was not necessarily happy about it, I do get the impression that he was sort of not really willing to carry out this operation. Nonetheless, the operation did go forward. So have to meet the next guy in our story here. We'll get to him in a moment. So the primary Allied unit that will take part in the action around Saint-Malo is the 83rd Division. The division was actually first formed in 1917 for World War I. It would arrive in France, but the division itself did not see action as a division during World War I. It was slated to become what was known as a depot division. Essentially, it would serve as a funnel for replacements to the other American units on the front line. One regiment, the 331st, was actually detached and sent to the Italian front to sort of act as, I guess, something of Allied solidarity. But that was actually the only intact unit of the 83rd Division that would see action in World War I. So the division does serve as sort of this clearinghouse and funnel point for replacements during the war. Now, in the interwar years, the 83rd became what was known as a reserve division, which meant essentially it existed primarily only on paper. It had very few enlisted personnel. It did have a cadre of officers who would continue to train during the interwar years. The idea being that in time of crisis, the division could be reactivated and then fleshed out very quickly with draftees. That's exactly what does occur. In August of 1942, the division is reactivated at Camp Atterbury in Indiana. And the division is then filled out with draftees, primarily from Ohio. The division is known as the Ohio Division. At least initially, many of its men were from Ohio. Although as the war progresses and casualties mount, that will change. But initially, the division is largely filled out with draftees from the Ohio-Indiana area. So the division is activated August of 1942. It will train in the United States until April of 1944, when it is sent to England. It's under the command of Major General Robert C. Macon. The division arrives in England April of 1944, where it trains for a few more months. It would then enter the continent on June 18th, 1944 at Omaha Beach. So it's not part of the initial wave of the Normandy landings. It arrives as reinforcements sometime after the initial Normandy landings. The division would have its first taste of combat in the Normandy breakout. It would actually face very heavy opposition, advancing about 8 miles in the face of stiff resistance. And it would be an integral part of the Allied breakthrough out of the Normandy area. The division would then, of course, be sent to Brittany as part of Patton's 3rd Army, 8th Corps under General Troy Middleton. And it would, of course, be the primary Allied force to break through in Saint-Malo. Division numbered about 15,000 men, 3 infantry regiments, the 329th, 330th, 331st. As well as supporting battalions of artillery, engineers, specialist units such as ordnance repair, things like that. So an American division was essentially meant to be sort of a self-sustaining, almost miniature army in and of itself. It had integral organic artillery, other units. The 83rd was very typical in that respect. So the 83rd, of course, are the heroes of our story. All right, General Robert Macon to the left, and of course, General Patton, 3rd Army Commander, are the ones in charge of the operation. Now on to the villain of our story. Okay, we got the good guys. Let's talk about the bad guys. However, he's an interesting guy. So Andreas von Auloch, he is the colonel in command at Saint-Malo. He is kind of like if you call central casting and say, send me a German officer. All right, he would be the guy. He's got the monocle, right? He's got the leather overcoat, right? He's got the swagger. He's got the German shepherd. He even has the French mistress. I mean, like I said, this guy is like the archetype of a German officer. I don't know if he had the scar. I'm not sure. Well, the history does not provide. Von Aulach was a member of the Prussian aristocracy from which the German army drew most of its officer class. He was a veteran of World War I. He had survived the blood-soaked fields of Verdun. At the end of the war, when the German army is drastically reduced by the Treaty of Versailles, he actually will leave the army. He becomes an executive for the Opel Automobile Works. He works for them for a number of years. And then in the late 1930s, as Hitler begins his expansion and rearmament of the German armed forces, obviously they're looking for experienced officers. Von Aulach is called back into service. So he once again rejoins the German army. He will be a part of most of the German campaigns, beginning with the invasion of Poland, the invasion of France. Later, he will command the 79th Division in Crimea. And he is an officer who believes in leading from the front. He actually participates in hand-to-hand fighting in Stalingrad. So he doesn't just, kind of hang back and give the orders. This guy definitely is up there with the men on the front line. He will be awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross with oak leaf clusters, which was about the highest award that the Wehrmacht could give at the time, sort of equivalent of the Medal of Honor. And he would be handpicked by Hitler to command at Saint-Malo. Now, he was not necessarily happy with that assignment. He much preferred to be in command of a maneuver division. However, he said that this is my assignment. And he said, I will take this assignment and I will defend the city to the last stone. So he is nothing if not a loyal and able soldier. Now, von Aulach sort of defies a lot of the stereotypes we have of the Nazis. We sort of see them all as these inherently evil people. But according to most accounts, he treated the French population very decently. He was very concerned for their welfare. In fact, at the notice of the Allied invasion of Normandy, von Aulach almost immediately realized that the city was likely to become a battlefield. He advised the French residents to leave. Most of them did not, but later when the Americans do envelop the city, one of the first things he does is request a flag of truce, and he has about 5,000 of the French civilians in the city evacuated under flag of truce. So he does appear to demonstrate some concern for the civilians that are in his area of operations, and again, kind of defying that sort of cold-blooded reputation that we seem to attach to so many Nazis. But he was not necessarily a fanatical Nazi, but he was definitely a dedicated soldier who will follow orders to the last. And it is not without reason that his men would call him the Mad Colonel of Saint-Malo. He will put up fierce resistance to this American incursion into his city. So the Colonel is commanding a hodgepodge of forces, kind of reflecting the chaos that was undergoing the German forces at the time. He has, of course, his garrison that was there, but the garrison was then augmented by survivors from the Normandy fighting. So the soldiers under his command are a very varied lot. He has what is known as the Ost Battalion, which is mainly Russian troops that had been captured and then given the opportunity to fight for Germany. Their enthusiasm, as you might imagine, was somewhat lacking. The 83rd Division later estimated that about 40% of them immediately surrendered at the first opportunity. So most of them were not too eager to die for Hitler. He also had the Magen Battalion. Magen means stomach in German. So it was a battalion made up of men with stomach ailments. And he also had the Ohren Battalion, which was made up of men with varying degrees of deafness. Right? Ohr is ear, right? So the ear battalion. So he does have some troops that are decidedly less than first class. However, he also does have some units of Fallschirmjäger, the German paratroops, who were highly professional, very disciplined, some of the best fighters in the German army. And he also has large numbers of the 77th Division, a veteran formation that had put up fierce resistance in Normandy and had then withdrawn to Saint-Malo. Altogether, von Auloch has around 12,000 men under his command. Again, this sort of mixture of units in terms of quality, but after the battle is over and the Americans are trying to make sense of the order of battle, they really can't because they're capturing so many different German troops from so many different units. Von Auloch sort of really had kind of a catch-as-catch-can situation there in terms of the troops he had at his disposal. Now, Allied intelligence on Saint-Malo was somewhat lacking. The Americans estimated there were somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 Germans in the city. The French resistance was telling them that number was wrong. The French resistance said there's more along the lines of 10,000. The Americans did not believe this, but again, as stated, the Germans had about 12,000 to 13,000 men in the city. So the Americans did vastly underestimate what would be necessary to take the city. The French were much closer in terms of their estimate. So essentially, the battle will begin in early August with Task Force A. It's a task force put together, some various units, some cavalry, some armor. Task Force A was initially charged with moving into Brittany very quickly and trying to capture bridges before the Germans could destroy them. As they're passing by Saint-Malo, they decide to probe the defenses of the city, to test the rumors, to see if the city is as lightly defended as believed. When they do probe the defenses, they are met with fierce resistance, and they realize that the city is much more heavily defended than they had anticipated. Again, their mission was not necessarily to take Saint-Malo. They were meant to move into the peninsula, try to capture these lines of communication. So they probe the defenses. They realize it's heavily defended. They call for infantry, and this is where the 83rd Division then enters the picture. The 83rd will enter the Brittany area, and beginning around August 5th, August 6th, they will start to probe the defenses of the city. Now again, a lot of the poorer troops were in the more outlying defenses, so some of these are quickly reduced. But the Americans are going to find the going in Saint-Malo very slow. The Germans had very cleverly situated pillboxes and bunkers along all the likely avenues of approach. There were also natural obstacles like ravines, ponds, streams, swamps that also slowed the American advance. So the entrance into Saint-Malo is going to be very problematic for the American forces there. Now, as the fighting develops, okay, try to find my map here. Did I pass my map? Okay, let's see. Oh, I guess I lost my map. All right. The city was bisected by the River Rance. So you have Saint-Malo on one bank of the river. On the other bank, you have the city of Dinard. So as the Americans are entering Saint-Malo, they're finding difficulty because of this arrangement. As they would move into Saint-Malo, they would take fire from Dinard. As they move into Dinard, they would take fire from Saint-Malo. So the Americans are going to find they're going to have to advance one direction or the other in order to make entry into the town possible. Now, as the Americans begin to enter the town, the French civilians are evacuated. However, a number of males between the ages of 16 and 60 are taken hostage by the Germans under rumors that they were firing upon German troops. Those rumors later proved to be incorrect, but these hostages were taken to what was known as Fort National, which was right off the coast of the city, and they were held there under American fire. The Americans were not aware that there were French hostages in Fort National, and unfortunately, American artillery fire would actually kill 18 of these hostages as they were being held there. During the fighting, the city also catches fire. It was an ancient city, medieval. Many of the buildings were built with very heavy timbers, and because of American artillery and German counterfire, the city begins to burn. Firefighters did remain in the city when the civilians were evacuated. Colonel von Auloch had requested the firefighters remain. However, the firefighters were largely helpless because the water supplies to the city had been cut off. The Americans had felt that this might hasten the German surrender. So sort of the backdrop of this action is a burning city, because the city would burn for days. And by the end of it, most of the city would be destroyed by fire. So the Americans decide to concentrate on Dinard. They will move against that city. It's on the west bank of the River Rance. By August 11th, they have captured Dinard. That city has now been taken out. The Americans can now focus on advancing towards Saint-Malo. Now, the advance to Saint-Malo featured the casino, which was made into a German strongpoint. The Americans will reduce the casino. They then have to cross a 1,000-yard causeway to actually enter the city. This they do under the cover of smoke. The first obstacle they run into is a chateau, which was owned by the Duchess Anne, who was actually Queen Consort of France at one time. The Germans had transformed this chateau into a fortress. The Americans will reduce the chateau. They will enter the city. As you can see, it's some of the worst types of fighting soldiers can endure. Urban fighting is a nightmare in the best of circumstances. Literally, in some cases, fighting room to room, house to house. The Americans would sometimes blow tunnels sort of through the houses so they could communicate back and forth without using the streets. Urban combat is a nightmare in the best of circumstances, and this is exactly what the Americans are encountering. So they make very slow progress through the streets. The city itself would wind up becoming an obstacle as it's under constant artillery fire. As you can see, the streets were becoming clogged with debris. When the war ended and the French began clearing the debris, it actually took 2 years to fully clear the city of debris before the reconstruction could begin. But the city itself, as so often happens in urban combat, winds up becoming an obstacle. And what you find is that you can hit these targets with artillery, but the enemy will simply dig into the rubble and then use that as a defense instead. So it's very slow going, but eventually the Americans will penetrate to the center of the city, where all that remains is the citadel. All right, it's this final German strong point. An assault force will actually break into the citadel. That assault force is made up of Company K. They do break into the citadel, but they find they cannot remain. They're driven back out by machine gun fire. So the citadel then comes under very heavy fire from American artillery. By the time the battle was done, the Americans had amassed 10 battalions of artillery in Saint-Malo. And these guns are pouring a constant fire into the city. The United States Army has had a long tradition of artillery. And the Germans in World War II would rightly fear American artillery. It was quite powerful, quite accurate, and very well supplied. The Americans actually brought up 8-inch guns close enough to the citadel where they could target individual portholes and things like that. And the Germans would later say it was the fire of those 8-inch guns above all else which encouraged them to surrender. I have to give the U.S. Army credit. They did try something novel. Remember I mentioned that von Auloch had a French mistress? Well, they had her telephone him and ask him to surrender. I'd like to be a fly on the wall for that conversation, you know. Colette, I told you, never call me at work, you know. Apparently von Auloch told her he wanted to be friends because that phone call did not work. But the Americans did attempt to get this guy to surrender by using the French mistress, but, you know, alas, to no avail. Love and war, right? So the Americans are using just about everything at their disposal to reduce the citadel. On August 15th, they are preparing to use a new weapon. P-38 Lightnings are loaded with a new type of bomb. That bomb is a jellied gasoline that will become notorious in a later war as napalm. And these aircraft are sent to the citadel. The first American P-38 does a dive bomb attack on the citadel. Almost like something out of Star Wars, the pilot actually puts this napalm bomb right through a ventilator shaft. This is like the Death Star, you know. That napalm bomb will actually detonate inside the citadel, terrifying the Germans because it sucks most of the air out of the building. So the German forces inside the citadel now face the unpleasant prospect of either asphyxiation or incineration. The P-38 pilot actually said as he was pulling out of his dive, he looked behind him to sort of see how the bomb run came out. He said he actually saw a white flag come up. And he very quickly radioed the rest of the squadron to call off the attack. So the other planes would go bomb a nearby target, the island of Cézanne, which was right off the coast. And the citadel was finally captured by the men of Company K, at which point they would obtain the flag that we see before us here. So if I go back a moment. So these are US troops on top of the citadel. Those are our boys right there, Company K, right on top of the building. And okay, stop it. All right, there we go. Colonel von Ollach emerging from the citadel into American captivity. So the citadel is taken. This does not end the fighting in Saint-Malo. There was one final outpost, the island of Cézanne, off the coast. German forces there would hold out until September 3rd under extremely heavy bombardment from the Army Air Corps, American artillery, as well as the Royal Navy, which actually brought a battleship off the coast of the island. They would be the final German forces to actually surrender. And that would then bring the fighting in Saint-Malo to an end. Now, in terms of the aftermath of the battle, okay, over 12,000 German prisoners of war were taken into captivity, including Colonel von Ollach, who would be held in Britain for the rest of the war as a prisoner. Colonel von Ollach would actually be tried as a war criminal after the war. He was accused of burning Saint-Malo. However, at his trial, he was acquitted because it was determined that the fires were actually started most likely by American artillery. Colonel von Ollach would return back to Germany, where he would live out the remainder of his life. He would pass away June 23rd, 1968, at the age of 75. Okay, most of the men who were taken into captivity would be held as prisoners of war until the end of the war, at which point they would be repatriated back to Germany. About 503 enemy dead were buried by the 83rd Division in the aftermath of the battle. So the Germans, did take some very heavy casualties there, killed, wounded, and captured. All right, the city of Saint-Malo. Oh, that's the island of Cézanne under bombardment there, as you can see, very heavy bombardment. Okay, we'll come back to that. The city of Saint-Malo was devastated in the attack. There were over 800 buildings in the city, and approximately 680 of them were completely destroyed. The remainder were damaged. So the city was about 80% destroyed. Clearing and reconstruction began in November of 1944, and that reconstruction would actually last until the early 1970s. So the city would be undergoing reconstruction for many decades. The city today, as you can see, has been restored to its former glory. Although the city's population, interestingly, has never returned to its pre-war levels. At the time of World War II, Saint-Malo had about 13,000 residents. The population has never returned to that number. Although, much like the 19th century, Saint-Malo today is a very popular vacation destination for many Parisians who want to get out of the city, go to the coast, and spend some time there. So Saint-Malo today has regained its former glory and is once again a tourist destination. Okay, now for the men of the 83rd, just a quick point I wanted to make. Saint-Malo was reduced, but there were large numbers of German troops on the French coast who were left in place, what became known as the Atlantic pockets. As the Allies turn eastward and advance across France, it's decided that there's no strategic value in these positions. So the Germans are essentially left where they are. They're bottled up by French forces and an American division, essentially becoming more or less prisoners of war. But as you can see, some of these pockets of German troops would actually not surrender until the end of the war in May of 1945. But it's kind of a forgotten note in World War II that these large numbers of German troops were left along the French coast because there was really not worth the effort or lives it would take to dislodge them. So they did remain. Now, as to the men of the 83rd, Saint-Malo was regrettably not the end of their war. They would join the advance across France. They would enter Luxembourg by September. And they would then take part in the nightmare of the Hurtgen Forest, which was one of the most vicious combats Americans would face in World War II. The 83rd would then soldier on through the Battle of the Bulge, helping to blunt the German advance. After the Battle of the Bulge, they would go through a period of rest and rehabilitation. When in March of 1945, they would again resume the advance. The 83rd would cross the Rhine. They would liberate Langenstein concentration camp, freeing the prisoners there. And by the end of the war in 1945, the 83rd had established a bridgehead across the River Elbe, which they would be holding when the war would end. The 83rd Division carved a bloody path across France into Germany. Over 15,000 men of the division would become casualties. Over 3,000 of them were killed in action. And the 83rd contributed mightily to the Allied victory in Europe in World War II. There was no prouder boast a man could say than that he had served with the 83rd Division in World War II. And as Americans today, all of us can take pride in the accomplishments of these great Americans and what they have done to secure a better world for us and for generations to come. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. See that I realized as I pulled the plug, I had one slide left. Just a little note of, I guess, popular culture. Netflix just last year created a miniseries called All the Light We Cannot See. It's based upon a novel of the same name, but if you're interested, it's well worth the look. But it takes place in Saint-Malo, so it's available on Netflix. All the Light We Cannot See. I regretfully cannot recall the name of the author who wrote the novel, but it's on Netflix. So a little bit of Saint-Malo in popular culture. So. Thank you.